welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Raisha Sehgal. On the show tonight, we will tell you about Pakistan's brazen admission of terror. After Pakistan's Defence Minister Khwaja Asif in an interview admitted that Pakistan had been supporting and training terrorists for the last 3 decades. He further pinned the blame on the West, saying that Pakistan has been doing this dirty work for the West. Also on the show, we will tell you about the looming war clouds between India and Pakistan. With historic agreements like the Indus Water Treaty of 1960 suspended and the Simla Agreement of 1972 under threat. Tonight, we tell you how we are staring at the most volatile India-Pakistan standoff in years. Away from India, we continue to tell you about the United States of America's continued campaign against Iran-backed Houthis. However, the Houthis are unrelenting. In less than 40 days, they have shot down 7 US Reaper drones. All that and a lot more lined up on Gravitas for you tonight. The shadows of war looms large over India and Pakistan. India is still reeling from the brutal terror attack in Pahalgam. But grief has now turned into rage. India demands accountability, not just from the attackers, but also from those who orchestrated the plot from across the border. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi has vowed that this outrage will not go unanswered.
India will identify, track and punish every terrorist and their backers. India's spirit will never be broken by terrorism. Everyone who believes in humanity is with us.
While India has already moved swiftly on the diplomatic front, a more forceful response seems to be building momentum. New Delhi is not just sending signals, it's showcasing strength. The Indian Air Force has launched exercise Akraman in the central sector. The operation features a fleet of cutting-edge aircraft, including the formidable Rafale jets and the versatile Su-30 MKIs. Top IAF pilots are simulating real combat missions across multiple terrains, rehearsing for scenarios that could turn real any day. While the drills come just days after the Pahalgam attack, the Indian Air Force maintains the exercise were planned earlier. Well, meanwhile, the Indian Navy has positioned INS Vikrant close to the Karwar coast in Karnataka, officially described as a routine deployment in the Arabian Sea. This move places Pakistan's Karachi well within its strike range. While INS Vikrant, India's first indigenously built aircraft carrier, can carry 36 aircraft, including MiG-29K fighters and advanced anti-submarine helicopters like the MH-60R and the Ka-31. In yet another powerful show of capability, the Indian Navy has successfully tested a new missile system from its destroyer INS Surat. The test destroyed a fast-moving sea-skimming target, further underscoring India's preparedness for any kind of escalation with Pakistan. Interestingly, in the 1971 Indo-Pak War, it was the Indian Navy that conducted a successful operation against Pakistan. The offensive operation was carried out in Pakistan's port city of Karachi. India's use of anti-ship missiles marked the first time that such ammunition were used in combat in this region. Well, the operation inflicted heavy damages on Pakistani ships and facilities, and the Indian Navy suffered no losses and returned home safely. Another standout feature was that the Indian Navy conducted their communication in Russian language in a bid to ensure that the enemy could not intercept or decode its messages. And perhaps India's Navy Day is celebrated to honor this operation called Operation Trident. And this time too, India is ready to respond to fire with fire. As the manhunt to nab the terrorist continues, the house of two Lashkar-e-Taiba terrorists, including the prime suspect of the Pahalgam terror attack, have been destroyed. That's when explosives believed to be stored there went off. The incidents took place during the intervening night of Thursday and Friday, when the houses were being searched by security forces in South Kashmir. Explosives were found during the search operation there, prompting forces to evacuate the occupants of the houses as well as neighbors to safety. Mosques across India were united in solidarity as Muslims offered their Friday prayers for the victims of the Pahalgam terror attack. Islamabad, meanwhile, has closed its airspace to Indian aircraft, both civilian and military, and also threatened the abeyance of the 1972 Simla Agreement. But walking away from that accord could backfire. If Pakistan discards this agreement, the Simla Agreement, it risks changing and changes along the line of control, something India could exploit to its strategic advantage. The Simla Agreement binds both countries to resolve issues peacefully and bilaterally. But if the agreement does not stand, New Delhi has the space to explore military options without violating any binding treaty. And it could use this freedom to strike terror launch pads or infiltration-prone zones. The agreement also mandated India and Pakistan to resolve bilateral issues without intervention from anyone else, from any third party. Now, with India holding a major sway with global powers from Washington to Tel Aviv and from the Gulf to Europe, New Delhi can use its global partnerships to further isolate Pakistan diplomatically and also economically. And all these factors make it increasingly unlikely for Islamabad to go through on its threat. Meanwhile, Pakistan's Defence Minister Khwaja Asif has issued threats, warning that Pakistan will retaliate if India launches any military operation. He claims India is planning strikes on multiple Pakistani cities, though he offered no evidence to that claim. Well, following the Pulwama terror attack in 2019, India responded with an airstrike deep inside Pakistan's territory. That confrontation stopped just short of a full-scale war, but only just. And today, the situation appears even more volatile. According to reports, brings the two countries a step closer to war. Historic agreements like the Indus Waters Treaty of 1960 and the Simla Agreement of 1972 were signed either to end wars or to help avert future ones. But if those safeguards collapse, nothing stops either side from choosing war over diplomacy. And that's where we find ourselves tonight. The drums of war are beating louder than they have in years. With no signs of de-escalation at this moment, we are staring at the most volatile India-Pakistan standoff in years. "26 innocent civilians, unarmed civilians, were butchered in Pahalgam. Their blood cries out from the Kashmir Valley, a stain on the conscience of a world that has long ignored Pakistan's terror factories. As India seethes with rage, the truth explodes in Islamabad's face. A Gravitas special report on how 5 years ago, Imran Khan admitted that terror camps are active on Pakistani soil, and now the current defense minister, Khwaja Asif, admits that the country had been supporting and training terrorists for the last 3 decades. Our next report telling you more.
For years, India and the world have pointed to terror camps thriving in Pakistan, Lashkar-e-Taiba to Jaish-e-Mohammed. They train, arm and infiltrate while Islamabad pretends innocence on the global stage. But the truth is out there. Let's jog our memories. 5 years ago, speaking in Washington, Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan admits to the presence of 40,000 active terrorists in his nation. He was replying to a question posed by WION in Washington.
When you talk about the militant groups, they still have about 30 to 40,000 armed people who have been trained and in some sort of a theater who fought either in Afghanistan, maybe in Kashmir. All these groups, including Al-Qaeda, had arrived in Pakistan. And not only that, there were linkages between these groups and the Pakistani security forces, because they had created them.
Pakistan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, when asked to comment on the candid confession, neither denied nor accepted. Watch how WION reported the story when the news broke.
This is not the first time that the Pakistani side has accepted that they are sponsoring terrorism, but India, of course, has reacted and reiterated that it would like to see Islamabad taking not only strong but credible, sustained and irreversible action on terrorists based on its territory, on territory under its control as well.
It was in response to WION's question at the USIP, where the Pakistani Prime Minister in elaborate said that there are about 30 to 40,000 members of these militias who have been trained to either fight jihad in Afghanistan or even in Kashmir, and that the fact that they could not be disarmed through the police, but in fact it was the job of the military.
Now, 3 days after the Kashmir massacre, in an astonishing admission, Pakistan's Defence Minister Khwaja Asif, speaking on live television, says, "We have been doing this dirty work for the United States for about 3 decades, and the West, including Britain."
Well, we have been doing this dirty work for the United States for about 3 decades, and West, including Britain.
Asif's words are a chilling reminder that the terror infrastructure in Pakistan is not a relic of the past, but a thriving state-sponsored enterprise. The terror group, the Resistance Front or TRF, is a Lashkar-e-Taiba proxy. It has claimed responsibility for the Pahalgam carnage, yet another bloody chapter in Pakistan's unending war by proxy against India. As tensions are peaking, the top brass in New Delhi and Islamabad went into huddles to chart the next course of action. Look at these images. On one side is Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi with his cabinet colleagues. All are civilians. This is India's Cabinet Committee on Security reviewing the overall security situation. Now see this image. Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif surrounded by Pakistan military generals. This is the meeting of the National Security Committee of Pakistan, dominated by the military. It is a chosen government. Pakistan knows it and the world knows it. There are no more excuses, no more denials. Pakistan is not just a safe haven for terrorists, it is their sponsor, their trainer, their banker. With Siddhant Sibbal and Anas Malik, Bureau Report, WION World One.
What is terrorism? It is the unlawful use of violence, particularly against civilians, for political gains. Did the killers of Pahalgam make it about religion? Yes, absolutely. But does it mean they have a religion? No, they do not. We know this as a society. Yet, every time there's a despicable act of terror, we struggle to come to terms with this idea. But if terrorists truly believed in a religion, would they have shot unarmed civilians on vacation in cold blood? No. It is pure evil that drives them. And we are not the only ones saying this. RSS chief Mohan Bhagwat has made a poignant statement. While condemning the terror attack in Pahalgam, he said that this attack is a battle between dharma and adharma. Bhagwat said, and I quote him here, "The fight that is going on right now is not between sects and religions. Its basis is religion, but this fight is between dharma and adharma. Our soldiers or our people have never killed anyone by asking about the religion. The fanatics who kill people by asking about the religion, Hindus would never do this. That is why the country should be strong." What does it mean? While dharma represents righteousness, duty, and the correct order that upholds the universe, adharma signifies unrighteousness and the violation of these principles. While dharma is about ethical conduct and balance in society, adharma is about disruption and suffering. Mohan Bhagwat's distinction between dharma and adharma is important. Yes, it's rooted in Hindu philosophy, but it is also a universal truth. Ultimately, it is terror that divides. In the case of Pahalgam, the terror group behind the attack has no true religion, despite the attempt to use religion as a facade for their violence. It is important to note that labeling these terror acts as religious would only serve to empower these killers and the agenda of division. Because remember, terrorism, especially when motivated by religious fervor, targets specific communities to foster division, just as we witnessed in this Pahalgam terror attack. They were terrorists, not armed gunmen, not fighters, much as the Western media would like to label them as such. They were not representatives of any faith or cause. They were merely terrorists who acted without zero regard for human life. That is why Bhagwat urged for unity, claiming that support within society is important to thwart such tragedies and deter malicious intent. To look at us with ill intentions. If someone does, their eyes will be crushed. We anticipate a strong response. And we agree. Because this horrific act has also revealed the strength of India, its national unity in the face of adversity. Bhagwat joins a long list of religious leaders across India who have in the past 3 days unitedly condemned the attack in Kashmir, affirming that such acts are a disgrace to every faith and that terrorism indeed has no religion. Let's tell you what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. We will tell you about Apple's China exodus, with the company now aiming to build most iPhones for US in India by as early as next year. We will also tell you about a bizarre trend that is fast picking pace, that of people betting on who the next pope will be. We will also tell you how a slew of countries that are witnessing a risk in dark tourism, all this while safety warnings are still in effect for the countries. And shifting focus to Ukraine now, after a deadly Russian attack on Kyiv which killed 12 people, Ukraine is showing signs of conceding territory. Yes, you heard that right. The mayor of Kiev, Vitaly Kostyeko, told BBC that Ukraine may have to give up land as a part of a peace deal with Russia. He told the British broadcaster that even though it's not fair, but for the peace, maybe it can be a solution. He also said that the Ukrainian people would never accept Russian occupation. Remember last night, massive Russian drone attack on Ukraine's capital city claimed the lives of 12 people and injured more than 100 others. Remember, Russia currently controls about 20% of Ukrainian territory. According to BBC, Kostyeko is now one of the most senior Ukrainian lawmakers to publicly state that his country may have to give up territory, albeit temporarily. Just last night, we told you about the war of words between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and US President Donald Trump over peace efforts. Trump has now accused Zelensky of harming peace efforts. And Zelensky has expressed concern about Washington's U-turn on Crimea. In an interview published with Time magazine, Trump said that Crimea will stay with Russia, but in 2018, during his first term, Washington had rejected the 2014 Russian annexation of Crimea. But now, with the battlefield heating up, Kiev has come under pressure to make some sort of a concession for peace, even if that involves conceding territory to Russia. On Friday, another development put a wrench in the works. A senior Russian military officer was killed in a car explosion on Friday in Balashikha, that's just east of Moscow. Russia's investigative committee identified the officer as Major General Yaroslav Moslaik, who served as the deputy head of the main operations directorate of the General Staff of the Russian Armed Forces. In light of the attack, a criminal investigation has been launched. The investigative committee has said that the explosion was caused by a homemade explosive device filled with destructive elements. However, the statement did not disclose any information about potential suspects in the case. This incident follows a pattern of assassinations targeting high-ranking Russian military officials since the onset of the war in Ukraine. In the past, Moscow has attributed these attacks to Kiev. As reported by Russian media outlet Gaza, the explosive was remotely detonated from a parked car as the Russian official who lived nearby walked past. And video footage published by Izvestia shows the moment of the explosion, which sent debris flying and ignited the vehicle. Another newspaper, Komrinsan, reported that a second individual also lost their life in the blast. Moskalik is a prominent figure in Russian military diplomacy. He has participated in some big negotiations concerning the war in Ukraine. Notably, he represented the Russian Army's General Staff during the Normandy format discussions that were aimed at following the Minsk agreements, which sought to put an end to the war between Ukraine and Russia since 2014. Kiev has not yet commented on this incident. And as far as diplomacy is concerned, US President Donald Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, has met with the Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow today. And Trump has described that meeting as a key moment in diplomacy to end the war. Remember, Witkoff has emerged as Washington's key interlocutor with Putin. As Trump pushes for a deal to end the war, video published by the Kremlin showed Witkoff and Putin shaking hands and also exchanging pleasantries before sitting down on opposite sides of a white oval table. Putin was accompanied by his foreign policy advisor and investment envoy. Now, Witkoff's latest visit to Moscow also comes a day after Trump criticized the Russian missile and drone attack on Kiev. He posted on social media saying, and I quote him here, "Vladimir, stop." But Trump also said there had been major progress as far as peace talks are concerned. As Trump said, the next few days are going to be very important. The US president has also expressed optimism. How soon will that translate into ending the war That remains to be seen. And shifting focus now to Gaza, where Israeli airstrikes have killed over 55 Gazans in the last 24 hours. But even as Gaza bleeds, Israel has threatened to expand its operation into a larger and more intense assault on Gaza if the remaining hostages taken by Hamas were not released. Multiple explosions were reported across Gaza City on Friday, with smoke billowing out of the city's scape. Remember, Israel ended its ceasefire with Hamas and renewed its air and ground war just over a month ago. It has sealed off Gaza's 2 million Palestinians from all food and other imports. That's since the beginning of March. They say it is to pressure Hamas to release the remaining hostages. Around 24 hostages are still believed to be alive with Hamas in Gaza. But as far as strikes on Gaza are concerned, Israel's offensive has killed over 51,000 Palestinians, mostly women and children. That's since the war started. Israel says it has killed around 20,000 Hamas militants on Thursday. Chief of Staff of the Israel Defense Forces, General Eyal Zamir, visited troops in Gaza and threatened to expand the offensive if hostages are not freed soon. He said that the Israeli army will continue to exert military pressure on Hamas and strengthen its control when required. A day later, on Friday, Israel's Defense Minister Israel Katz met on Friday with the commander of the U.S. Central Command, General Michael Kurella. And that's since Israel resumed the war in March, its forces have taken over more than half of Gaza. And heavy airstrikes have killed nearly 2,000 Palestinians. Hamas has said that it will only release the remaining 59 captives, 24 of whom are believed to be alive, in exchange for the release of Palestinian prisoners. A lasting ceasefire, and the other demand is, of course, a full Israeli withdrawal. But Israel has vowed to destroy Hamas. The Israeli military is not the only thing Gaza has to worry about. The UN's World Food Programme on Friday warned that it has depleted all its food stocks in the war-ravaged Palestinian territory, where the entry of humanitarian aid has been blocked by Israel. The World Food Programme, or WFP, which is one of the main providers of food in Gaza, said in a statement that they have delivered the last remaining food stocks to hot meals kitchens in Gaza, and these kitchens are expected to fully run out of food in the coming days. After 18 months of war, UN's humanitarian agencies described the situation in Gaza as probably the worst now. Well, America has been relentless in pounding Yemen. It continues to conduct near 24/7 operations against the Iran-backed Houthis and deploys the very best of its fighter jets and missiles as it ramps up its onslaught against the Houthis. And this is the Carl Vinson, America's nuclear-powered Navy aircraft carrier, from where F-35s are preparing to strike Houthi targets. Or the Harry S. Truman, a giant in the region of maritime security operations, and counter-terrorism efforts. The US is banking on these advanced warships to give Houthis what it calls a befitting reply for the group's attacks in the Red Sea and Arabian Sea. An onslaught of US airstrikes combined with economic sanctions against Yemen have worsened the humanitarian crisis in the country, and the impact is borne by the civilians. But the Houthis are unrelenting. In less than 40 days, they have shot down seven US MQ-9 Reaper drones in a big jolt to the US defense system. And that's according to defense officials. 3 of the drones were shot down just in the past week. At least 15 Reapers have been brought down by the Houthis since October 2023. That's when the Houthis began targeting commercial shipping in the Red Sea region and Gulf of Aden. And that's through firing one-way attack drones and missiles at US military ships. Unmanned aircraft flying over Yemen are increasingly becoming targets of the Houthi militia, both over land and at the sea. But that is really only half the story. These drones are no ordinary drones, but advanced MQ-9 Reaper drones. The cumulative cost is around $200 million. This is the dramatic cost that the Pentagon has to bear for its sustained military campaign against the Iran-backed Houthis. So what are these MQ-9 drones capable of? The MQ-9 Reaper drones, also known as Predator B, is an unmanned aerial vehicle capable of remotely controlled or autonomous flight operations. It can fly at a high altitude and have a long endurance level, which makes it a reliable weapon of choice for battlefield assessment. Moreover, it provides real-time surveillance and reconnaissance information that is key in locating targets for airstrikes. And as of now, the US Air Force has about 280 Reapers in its inventory, and they are really expensive. We just told you the amount. Each Reaper drone costs around $30 million. The downing of one of these comes as a big pinch for the Pentagon. MQ-9 Reaper drones are a part of the arsenal of not just the US. Several countries, including the UK, Italy, France, Spain, and the Netherlands, use Reapers. India, too, is reportedly set to acquire 31 MQ-9 Reapers, including 15 for the Navy, 8 for the Air Force, and the remaining 8 for the Indian Army. The latest barrage of drone shootings by the Houthis come as a major setback for the United States of America and reportedly hinders its ability to move into phase 2 of the anti-Houthi operation. This also largely compromises the US plan to achieve air superiority over Yemen within 30 days. The US has struck more than 800 Houthi targets since the Trump administration launched the campaign on the 15th of March. Trump had promised to use overwhelming lethal force until the Houthis cease their attacks on shipping along an important maritime corridor. And the new phase is intended to focus on ramping up intelligence to strengthen its combat and also expand its targets. Now, with one of its best drones being frequent targets, can the US reinvent its war arsenal? Given the cost of the damage, the challenge currently remains an uphill one. And Apple is all set to move the assembly of all iPhones sold in the United States to India by as early as next year, marking a major strategic pivot away from China as tensions and operational challenges mount. According to a report by the Financial Times, the tech giant has accelerated its manufacturing diversification plans, aiming to rely less on China, which currently dominates its manufacturing pipeline. This comes amid increasing pressure from Washington on American firms to reduce dependency on Beijing and move operations to friendlier, more stable markets. India, with its large workforce and government-backed incentives, it has emerged as Apple's top alternative. Foxconn, Apple's key supplier, is already expanding its footprint in the southern Indian state of Tamil Nadu. However, The shift has not been without hurdles. According to reports, China has allegedly begun creating roadblocks to Apple's India ambitions by delaying shipments of key components and scrutinizing operations more intensely. Now, these unofficial trade barriers have added friction to Apple's supply chain, making India's role even more critical at this point of time. Apple's India push not only strengthens the country's position in global electronics manufacturing, but also sends a strong signal to other MNCs evaluating China Plus One strategies. As of now, about 7% of iPhones are assembled in India. If this move is completed by 2025, that number will rise sharply, with Apple achieving a historic manufacturing milestone. And for Indian workers and suppliers, this could mean a major rise in job creation and local investment. While for consumers and trade watchers, it redefines the global tech manufacturing map. US President Donald Trump is running out of time with biting tariffs, rusty supply chains, and warnings ringing from America's biggest retailers. Trump has just 2 weeks to stop the country from facing the unthinkable. Empty shelves in stores coast to coast. Trump's latest 10% tariff hits all imports from friends and foes alike. Chinese exports to the US face up to 245% tariffs, to which Beijing hit back with a 125% levy on American imports. Washington's move was meant to look tough, but it's now threatening to backfire. CEOs from Walmart, Target and Home Depot told the Oval Office that if things don't change quickly, then Americans will be seeing bare shelves by July 4th. Prices will increase and goods from toys to electronics to car parts could vanish overnight. Trump's response has been to cut deals and double down. He's racing to close a $100 billion arms package with Saudi Arabia, hoping to score a win for US defense giants Lockheed Martin and Boeing. But while he is making deals abroad, the crisis is spreading at home. Investors are spooked. Stocks, bonds and the dollar have all taken a hit as Wall Street braces for more testy times. Past trade wars have shown that tariffs trigger global retaliation, job losses and economic slowdowns. But this time, the stakes are much higher. With the world still recovering from pandemic shocks, America's supply chains are more fragile than ever. And the next 2 weeks are extremely critical. If Trump cannot ease the tariff pain, the July 4th holiday could become a season of empty promises and empty shelves. The clock is ticking. The shelves are thinning. Trump has 2 weeks to prove he can make America shop again. The numbers are stark. Ocean shipments to the US have plunged by 60%, tucking out of Los Angeles is down 23%. Retailers are scrambling to find new supplies, but it takes months to rebuild global supply chains. And with tariffs slamming $1,243 onto the average household's annual bill, millions of families are already feeling the pinch if imports dry up. The pain will be everywhere, from empty aisles in supermarkets to car dealerships with no new stock and electronics stores with nothing but dust. As hundreds and thousands of mourners gather in St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City to pay their last respects to Pope Francis, a bizarre trend is fast picking pace. People are betting actually on who will be the next pope. On April 21st, the internet was quickly set ablaze, with illegal betting operators cashing in on the speculation on who will succeed him. Such is the interest that the betting activity is even overtaking the hugely popular FA Cup. Besides seasoned bettors, crypto-powered websites like Polymarket, where investors bet on future events, have jumped in to predict the Pope's successor. A U.S. website that became hugely popular during the 2024 U.S. presidential elections has already accepted over $5.5 million in bets on the next pope. So, who is leading and who is trailing? As per Polymarket, Italian Cardinal Pietro Parolin, who was Francis' number 2 during much of his papacy, is leading with a 30% chance of becoming the pontiff. And he is closely followed by Luis Antonio at 24%, a Filipino who could be the first Asian pope. Then there is Matteo Zuppi at 12%. Peter Turkson from Ghana at 9%, who could be in the running to be the first black pontiff. A note for the viewers here, these are the bets placed as of 14:30 GMT and they are open for changes. All this could potentially be a gold mine, a multi-million-dollar global market, if you will, or an example in cyber opportunism. A trend where scammers use high-profile global events to spread misinformation, infect devices and also extract personal data. But choosing a pope's is not the arena for bettors or bookmakers who have taken a fancy for the papacy. This is the field of the Vatican experts who go through a fairly detailed, time-tested and honored procedure of choosing the next pontiff. And well, we are now cutting across to live visuals coming in from St. Peter's Basilica at the Vatican City, where, as you can see, there's a massive crowd who are there, who continue to gather at St. Peter's Basilica as they continue to pay their respects to Pope Francis ahead of tomorrow's funeral. These are the live visuals from St. Peter's Basilica at the Vatican City, where mourners have gathered to pay their last respects. With the Basilica operating extending hours, and reports also suggest that world leaders, including Donald Trump, Emmanuel Macron and Volodymyr Zelensky, are expected to attend the funeral tomorrow. Well, tourism in the past few years has evolved into many different types and trends, reflecting changing traveler interests, lifestyle, and even global events. We have heard about cultural tourism, ecotourism, and even spiritual tourism. The list goes on, but tonight we will tell you about dark tourism. It's a kind of tourism that goes beyond typical sightseeing and exploring locations. This is a kind of tourism which involves travel to places historically associated with death, tragedy, and suffering. One country that is now benefiting from the rise of dark tourism is Libya. It is now emerging as a captivating destination for travelers who are not just drawn to its beauty, but also to the powerful echoes of history and resilience. The North African nation is now attracting tourists, even as multiple governments continue to warn against traveling there. Countries like the United States of America, Australia and the United Kingdom, they all have maintained their highest level travel advisories for Libya. However, despite all these warnings, the travel and tour world has revealed that nearly 100,000 international travelers visited Libya last year. Travel experts say that the rise in interest in dark tourism reflects a broader shift where some travelers are doing away with traditional beach holidays in favor of destinations with turbulent histories or ongoing crises. Let's now tell you about other countries where dark tourism is thriving. The Holocaust sites in Germany, underground burial towns in France, various sites related to Armenian genocide, and sites related to the Nazi regime in Austria. Well, the world's coral reefs are going through an unprecedented crisis. They are facing the most intense bleaching event ever recorded, with 84% of them now affected. It now marks the fourth global bleaching event since 1998. Our next story telling you more.
Extreme heat stress is turning over 80% of the world's coral reefs white or colorless. In what has now become the most widespread coral bleaching event on record, scientists say the mass bleaching, which began in early 2023, has impacted coral reefs in at least 83 countries and territories, including major biodiversity hotspots world over. This is Australia's Great Barrier Reef, once resplendent with vibrant colours, now reduced into a dull white. According to the US National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, this is the fourth global coral bleaching event ever recorded, and the second one to take place in the last decade.
This latest report that's, compiled from around the globe and showing that 84% of the coral reefs have been affected by this bleaching event is just unparalleled. Each mass bleaching event has gotten worse, and I think it will continue to do so.
These are large parts of the Pacific and Caribbean Oceans, bearing the highest alert levels for coral bleaching due to extreme heat. Besides bleaching, it also induces high risks of coral death. And the signs are more evident than ever. The ocean is warming up, forcing corals to expel the algae they rely on for food and color. Last year marked Earth's hottest year on record, much of which goes into oceans. And if this continues, scientists fear the ongoing bleaching event may never end.
The best way to protect coral reefs is to address the root cause of climate change. And that means reducing the emissions, the human emissions that are mostly from burning of fossil fuels, also from production of cement and other things. But that's the biggest part. Everything else is looking more like a Band-Aid rather than a solution.
Experts say activities like burning of fossil fuels are to be blamed for warming of the planet and the ocean. And unless brought under control, it can prove to be deadly for these marine wonders. Coral reefs support about 25% of all marine species. They support fisheries, protect coastlines from erosion and storms, and fuel tourism industries. They are useful to human life in more ways than one, and they need urgent saving. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
In the world of space, Hubble is a household name for unraveling the hidden mysteries from deep space. And yesterday, the space telescope turned 35. And to mark the occasion, NASA released a series of new definition images that it has captured over the years. Take a look.
The universe is a melting pot of wondrous events. A star is born somewhere, elsewhere a cloud erodes in deep space, and all thanks to Hubble, our generation did not miss out on any of these events. More than 30 years ago, Hubble stirred our imagination by expanding our understanding of the universe and bringing us spectacular visual treats from neighboring planets to distant galaxies. Hubble has made it seem that absolutely nothing is out of bounds for it. Till date, it remains a vital tool for astronomical research. Recently, NASA released 4 high-definition photos taken by Hubble, and the outcome surely exceeds even Hubble's standards. This is Rosette Nebula, a rare star-forming region.
So to celebrate Hubble's 35th birthday, we're releasing 4 new images from Hubble. There are different parts of the universe. One of them is the Rosette Nebula, or a part of it, where stars are still forming. And you can see dark clouds and then lit up clouds behind those where new stars are ionizing the gas and showing off this glow.
The anniversary images also showcase Mars in rare shade, a vibrant planetary nebula, and the flocculent spiral galaxy NGC 5335, all captured in detail thanks to Hubble's ultraviolet capabilities.
This eye on the sky has given people around the world a new view of the universe, how vast it is, how beautiful it is, and how active it is. And how we are all fellow citizens of planet Earth, just looking up in awe and wonder at what we're discovering because of this wonderful miracle of technology.
It's not for nothing that Hubble gets the tag for being the most well-recognized and scientifically productive telescope in history. With nearly 1.7 million observations and over 22,000 scientific papers to its credit, for over 3 decades Hubble has had its eyes on the universe, offering a new look at space in a way that it has never been seen before, and now it has a successor, the Habitable Worlds Observatory, that will aim to continue its legacy. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Well, for years we have considered it a fact that football, the most popular sport in the world, was invented in England. But now, a sports historian claims to have discovered the world's oldest football pitch, which is not in England, but north of the border in Scotland. Jed O'Brien believes this discovery will rewrite everything people know about the origins of modern football. Well, according to FIFA, the sport's global governing body, the birth of football as we know it was in 1863, when the English Football Association, formerly